And welcome back, everyone, to On the Job here on Cheddar, the December Jobs Report. I'm Baker Machado in New York, and the Biden administration is set to usher in new policies to address the jobs crisis here in the U.S. Some of the president-elect's biggest points include ramping up manufacturing, investing in great infrastructure, helping working parents, and even supporting minority entrepreneurs. So joining us now to discuss this is Lesniewski, chief correspondent of the White House and Congress over at Roll Call. Niels, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, about 12 days or so now until Joe Biden officially takes over. And you have to think with how the economy and what the job market is right now, he's going to really have to hit the ground running really fast. So what real changes do you think we could see under a Biden administration?
Well, the first thing that the Biden administration is going to have to figure out is whether or not to push for anything in addition to the remainder of those $2,000 stimulus checks in the first batch. So the $600 that already went out that I know you were talking about before the break, the $1,400 that they want per person to go out soon, as he said when he was on the campaign trail in Georgia just a couple of days ago before the runoffs. The question is, how much do they want to try and get any other sort of economic stimulus or relief measures into legislation with that $1,400? There has been some reporting that they may want to put in more money for vaccine distribution, maybe the elusive state and local government aid to pay firefighters and police officers and all sorts of public safety people. This is really the question immediately, is how much do they want to try and take in that first bite of the apple, and how much will Congress go along with?
Yeah, they're very, very valid point. And you're right, the state and local aid essentially now going to maybe be thrown back in there when just a few weeks ago, that was a non-starter for Mitch McConnell. Again, Joe Biden has said that this, even if they get the $1,400 to get the $2,000, that's still really only a down payment in his mind. He still wants to get more stimulus. But in a post-Trump Republican Party, would we see more Republicans get on board with that? Or, as we've heard from Lindsey Graham and other Republicans, are they going to be focused on the deficit specifically, which makes it much harder to get any sort of new stimulus passed here?
I think the question will be when they make their pivot to suddenly having revived concerns about the deficit that they haven't really had during the Trump administration. So the question will be whether there's enough Republicans who will be on board thinking that the economy has not yet recovered, that Main Street in particular is still hurting to an extent that there needs to be another big COVID-related economic relief package or not. I think that once we get through the pandemic, and again, no one knows whether that's 6 months, a year from now, or sooner than that. Once we get through the pandemic, there are going to be a lot of deficit scolds in the Republican Party, but I just don't know how many of them will magically reappear on January the 21st.
Niels, obviously winning the Senate runoffs in Georgia, a huge boon for Joe Biden. Essentially now, even though you have the Senate majority, it's the smallest. It's going to be so incredibly small, and it puts more pressure on people like Joe Manchin from West Virginia. This essentially puts a stop on any sort of large-scale progressive moves that Joe Biden would want to make. So with a 50-50 split and Kamala Harris breaking the tie, what conceivable legislation could Joe Biden actually get passed here? Could he get any sort of climate legislation passed here with 51 votes? Could he get any sort of other economic bills passed? Could he find bipartisan support when it comes to infrastructure? What can he get done with this sort of a Senate?
So infrastructure is a logical place to try and turn, which I know over the past 4 years, Infrastructure Week has been something of a punchline. But I would think that they would try and do a big infrastructure package because there is pent-up demand even among at least some Republicans for that. The other thing, and this is a bit of an administrative procedure sort of matter, but the Congressional Review Act, which can be used with just a simple majority to overturn rulemakings that have been made fairly late in the Trump administration. A lot of the early priorities of the Biden administration, whether they like it or not, are probably going to revolve around undoing things that have been done in the past year and in the past 4 years, more than advancing the ball down the field, at least at the outset.
Niels, we know President Trump talks all the time that he had at one point before the pandemic the greatest economy ever. We had the unemployment rate in the 3s%. Now it's about 6.8%. All indications are from economists we're only going to add about 50,000 jobs today. That would be the smallest amount we've added since April. And this is President Trump's last jobs report. Does this kind of put some weird footnote, and maybe a bad footnote for him, leaving his presidency with such anemic job numbers potentially coming in today?
It's certainly the reality, and probably that is true, although I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if in fact the jobs report comes in as expected or weak, that the president focuses on how much the stock market has been up this week. That is one of the oddities of the way that President Trump has dealt with economic figures, is he goes around and finds the ones that match his narrative on a particular day, particularly when he doesn't have Democrats to blame. I think in this case, he'll probably claim that it's because of Joe Biden that the jobs report may not be great, which won't really be the reality because President-elect Biden isn't in office yet. But, he took credit for jobs reports early. This could be sort of a signal at the end of that, but I think that he may also take credit for other economic numbers that look better.
Yeah, Niels Lesniewski, chief correspondent over at the White House and Congress for a Roll Call. Good to have you here, Niels. Thank you so much for joining us.